definitely don't do a podcast. All right, so
Let's start talking. You never know where it's going to go.
Is that on?
Yes.
Damn.
My name is Phil, and this is my partner, Will.
Hold on, let me get a left-hand pull.
I'm like,
It's like, he started it.
what's gonna suck is my I'm using the microphone there, so you guys have something that's half decent. Phillip, you're former Navy SEAL, SEAL Team 10,
10, yeah.
and then Will, you're a financial planner and a lunatic.
I'm a bit disturbed.
Oh, everyone's disturbed.
That's true.
Yeah. So what got you? I guess we can go back to why you guys bought Karambit.
Yeah, I get a call from the owner of Karambit.com. And he's like, hey, man, you've been a really loyal customer of mine. Love the backstory. It's my tertiary weapon that I used in the SEAL teams. Beautiful everyday carry and amazing self-defense knife. So it's what I carried during my time in the SEAL teams. And I'd bought a bunch of them, was selling them at my gigs. You know, I'm getting in front of people and talking about the knife and displaying my gear. And so I started selling them for a little while. And he calls me up and he's like, hey, you've been a really loyal customer of mine and know your backstory. Know it's, you know, how important, how much you love the Karambit. I'm selling the company. What do you think? And I was like, hell yeah, let's go. So I started making some phone calls, and Mr. Simkins here, my brother from another mother, he was one of the first guys I called and thought about him and prayed about it together. And we're like, you know what? We think this is a good idea. Let's go ahead and go for it. So I'm not the brightest crayon in the box. So I needed somebody who was a lot smarter than me to help me try to run the business. So that's where Will steps in. He's kind of our CFO, right? Being a financial advisor. So we both kind of like cross into each other's lanes at times, but he primarily handles the finances. But as you can see, he's a badass. And so he helps promote it and does videos and stuff too. And
His crayon's pretty bright. I mean, he was a Navy SEAL. They don't let just anybody in. And actually, prior to that, I brought him into my life for his expertise. So he's being very humble right now. Because not only was he a SEAL, but also has masters in leadership, went to divinity, right?
Yep. Denver Seminary.
Yep, seminary. I relied on the person to the left and to the right of me in school. This guy here actually could handle it himself. So Phillip actually was my business coach, right? So I have a little bit of an ego, just a little bit, and it always needs to be kept under check. And I was not as
refined.
Was it refined the right number? I was going to say I wasn't as empathetic.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
I think I'm pretty refined.
That's true. Empathetic.
I know which fork to use when I'm at a table.
Do you guys want to start holding hands again?
No.
I am not holding him.
Inwardly,
anymore.
he really wants to, but
no more hugs for this. No, but I'm pretty.
You were kind of like a bull in a china shop.
Yeah. Bull in a china shop, and I needed to be softened a bit. Not saying he's soft, but what we learned is that the best leaders actually have the ability to be open and transparent.
There you go. So I pulled out my velvet sledgehammer and
beat the crap out of me.
Yeah.
For about 2 years. And part of the process as my coach, well, for me, I needed somebody like a Phillip to be able to teach me how to be softer, because he's not soft. I mean, he has the ability to remove a threat in, 50 different ways if he decides, right? That's pretty hard, you know? So I needed somebody hard to teach me to be soft. Does that make sense?
It does. But you can also remove a threat in a very tactical and almost even subversive way where the person doesn't even realize what you're doing. So I like to call it tactical empathy, right? Or it's being able to address the person, validate what they're talking about, but almost be able to walk them off the ledge, cool them down, calm them down, realize, okay, I'm not like in fight or flight right now, right? Like, let's just have a good conversation, and feeling heard and understood is a big part of that.
That kind of reminds me of one of Dale Carnegie's parts in his book, that you have to if you want your idea to be accepted by someone else, you have to make sure it sounds like their idea.
There's a process that people go through, and most people are unconsciously unaware of whatever that might be, right? We all have something in our life that we're not aware of. So unconscious incompetence with whatever, and then moving them along this trajectory of unconscious incompetence to conscious incompetence. Then they finally realize, oh, wow, I do kind of suck at this listening thing, right? So I need to get better. And then there's this magical line of demarcation that they cross where they become then conscious and starting to become competent, right? Conscious competence. And then the ninja level is unconscious competence, where they're just competent and they don't really even have to give much effort to it because it's just become a part of their life.
And some of the exercises that Phillip taught me over the years is how to build the muscle memory to become unconsciously conscious. Competent.
Yeah.
Consciously competent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We still have more work to do, obviously. So
But, it's the practical application of it, you got to be conscious to be competent.
that's right. At first. Absolutely.
And then becomes muscle memory.
Yep.
And then, but I've dropped the ball many times.
Me too, bro.
Yeah.
We're all guilty of that.
Yeah.
But what do you do though when you realize you dropped the ball? That's the most important
you
part.
know what? I learned to say I'm sorry.
Dude, you laugh, but it's hard. It's hard.
I'm excited.
The way you said it was such like a little playful child. It was like, yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, seriously, those two words,
Yeah.
they're hard.
Yeah. Unless it's in a sport, right? If I'm playing a sport, I'll say I'm sorry all the time. My bad, because it's natural. And then we have the ability to move on. But in the more intimate relationships, I'm not saying that you have relationships with your teammates aren't intimate, because they are, but like with a spouse, yeah.
For your kids?
Or your kid. Oh yeah. With the kids saying your dad messed up, big.
Because we think, oh, I'm a man, men don't, we have to keep this persona, I'm not going to say I'm sorry. I'm not going to admit that I'm wrong, because that's weakness. I'm a man. But bro, real men, first of all, they're not afraid to show emotion. They're not afraid to cry.
I'm not holding your hand anymore though.
I'm kind of bummed out about that.
Yeah.
But I'll get over it.
I just wanted to put that out there on tape.
You're hurting
do
the
they,
man.
do they use tape anymore? Not tape.
For the massive productions, they use 35 millimeter.
Oh, did they really? Okay. I'm sorry. I digress.
You're still hurting my feelings. The many feelings that I have raging through my body right now.
Is there a balance between being emotional and being logical to have that, be able to have the logical reasoning as well as the emotional intelligence?
100%. It's hard. It's hard to hold
under stress though.
It's hard to hold both of those in tension together, because you want to listen to your heart. That's how you react, but oftentimes then you end up.
But under stress, bro. Under stress.
Well, how do you play in the Navy SEALs?
Yeah.
'Cause you have someone that your brother right next to you, and you're in open combat. How do you, a Navy SEAL is down, but you have to address the threat?
Yeah, so you have to finish the fight. You have to address the threat until the threats are neutralized, and then you go help your buddy if you can. But in the moment, it's just your training kicks in, and it's that muscle memory that we're taught that really takes over in that moment. And we actually go through something called a hood drill that trains our amygdalas and our brains to not fire, to not enter into that fight, flight, or freeze response. And it's very important that you don't get emotional. After a firefight, when there's a lull, in the night, that's when the emotions flood, and that's when, you need to deal with those raw and messy emotions sometimes. But in the moment, you stay present. It's all about the job. You're still tactical. You're relying on your training and your expertise to get the job done.
Yeah. What do you guys do to train the amygdala?
The hood drills. So it's a big, large room with role players that are around the room, people who we don't know, men, women, children, and they all volunteer to come in and kind of help us with this session of our training, this block of our training. And we're there, and they have a big hood, hence the hood drill. It's on a pulley system, and when it's your turn to go, you go in the middle of the room. They lower that big hood over your head. They play this loud music, It's rock music, Middle Eastern music, whatever it might be. So you can't hear anything, you can't see anything. They stop the music, pull up the hood, and you have to immediately assess the situation and address that threat or non-threat, appropriately.
Are you wearing bell bottoms?
Oh, dude. These are my tactical pants.
Oh, is that what those are?
Why are you looking at my legs?
Is that so you can pull them over your heels?
Yes, because I have cankles. So I want to be able to hide my fat ankles. Thank you for pointing that out. I'll show the camera just this once. I'm like,
also for those behind the camera,
he's ADD, bro.
I am seriously
good luck trying to keep us on point.
I went off my meds a month or two ago, so I'm sorry.
He didn't hear a word I said. He's just staring at my ankles the whole time. Will Smith, bro. Will. Come on, bro.
Oh boy, I'm sorry.
I know that we'll talk this more on our podcast, but there is a lot of the things that you have troubles with the modern society and how they treat the masculinity.
Yeah. I believe Phillip and I are a representation of our company. And unfortunately, sometimes it's difficult to convey how we feel through a website. Unfortunately, men are not as, and this is a generalization, maybe, but it's my opinion. Yeah. What I've observed is that men aren't necessarily as present in churches outside of leadership, or husbands or fathers aren't as present as we could be. Many times it's being led by the woman, and we're called in the word to be the priests of our home. So defaulting, to the woman to run the church, to do the hard work, in a place of faith is out of order. So, I know for myself it's really important. My faith is important. I'm a Christian. So is he, by the way. So he is my brother, literally, like my brother. It's important that we demonstrate that, in that ecosystem, as well, because men want to see other men lead and be strong, no matter what the environment. So, but that doesn't mean you walk in and you're pushing people around or being a bully or anything of that sort. It's having the ability to listen, to be empathetic, be able to give a hug, to be open and honest, work hard, to follow through, all of those little nuances. But if there is a threat, a physical threat, to have the tools available to alleviate that threat, because we're also called to be protectors as well. So that was a really long answer to a short question. And I can continue on with it because there's more, because I am passionate about that.
I have a question that I want to apply both to the Navy SEALs and to, I guess, the faith-based perspective. For people who have troubled childhoods, troubled teenage years, that they didn't fit in the world, they have either social media was kind of screwing them up with all the different stuff that you'll find online, or they just had a family that didn't have the kind of values that they're striving to have themselves. What would you do how would you apply your training or your faith to making yourself a better person despite not having that as a child?
Ooh.
I think the first thing that comes to my mind is mentorship. Find a mentor. Find someone who is 2 or 3 life stages ahead of you. Link arms with that person and invite them into that sacred place in your life to speak into your life and really start that mentor relationship. We have the same thing as SEALs. When you're a new guy and you show up to a platoon, they're not just going to throw you to the wolves. You're not just going to learn everything out of osmosis. They need to teach you, not hold your hand, and not give you consequences when you mess up, right? There's things we have to pay the man if you make a mistake. But we need to be mentored and shown the right way to do things in the military and in the spiritual, aspects of our life as well too. So first and foremost, I would say if that is someone who grew up with a really messy upbringing, they're floundering, they're confused, they're not real sure where to start, get plugged into a faith-based community and find someone there that you can really link arms with and live life with.
Yeah. I didn't grow up in a faith-based home. So I am a example of the question. Now, my parents weren't against God, weren't against Jesus. They just didn't put emphasis in it in the home. So this was a personal decision I decided to make as an adult. But unfortunately, the true relationship, with Christ happened out of tragedy, which is, quite frankly, most of the time. You find Jesus or find your faith at the lowest point. I don't know, maybe we'll do that on the other podcast, but that's where my relationship, was the fire actually was lit at that time. That was after my divorce from my first wife, and I'm married now. Wife number 2, still married now, but it was a first wife. And so that's when I audibly heard Jesus's voice. And I was alone because, again, men many times will go through this stuff in solitude. Bad thing, right? To try to walk it by yourself. So that's another reason why this is important, and your question is important. But and I was just trying to figure it out. I was trying to figure out what I was going to do, or if I was going to continue to move forward with life in general. Because for me at the time, it felt like it was all gone. So without getting into a whole lot of detail, kids were no longer there, gone. Wife was no longer there, gone. Business was in shambles at the time. It was just me and my dogs. And then eventually it was like, okay, Jesus decided to show up, and we had a conversation, and, shook me back to life. But in that moment, I was trying to solve the issue the only way that I knew how to solve the issue, which would not have been good for anybody. And I would have said I was a Christian before then, for sure. I would have said it, but I didn't understand what it really meant until then.
In your mind, generalizing, how many men out there do you think would call themselves a Christian right now, but really they're not? They're talking the talk, but they're not really walking the walk truly. How many, what percentage of men out there do you think who call themselves Christians are really, they're not fans of Jesus, they're true followers of him?
Yeah. I would actually say men and women, just in general, it's probably over 90% of Christians, air quotes, for sure, do not follow the actual word that Jesus put in the Bible. And not saying that you got to execute at 100%, because nobody can execute at 100%, or you Jesus, right? So we're all going to mess up, but won't even demonstrate in the most simple action or decision that is aligned with the word.
And we're not sitting here in judgment of those people.
No.
Not from judging them from a character standpoint. I think it's okay to judge certain behavior, but not the person. Like, you hate the sin, but not the sinner, right? So we can't be tolerant of that hypocrisy, but we're calling it what it is. And I call it buffet Christianity. It's like, oh, I like that. I'm going to pass on the broccoli. Oh, I like the shrimp though. I'll take some of this. Living with my girlfriend, having sex outside of marriage. That's good. I like that. I'll take some of that. So it's this pick and choose that I think it's a very slippery slope. And unfortunately, I think most people who call themselves Christians, you ask anybody down on the street, pull them aside. Yeah, I believe in God. I consider myself a Christian. And what are they going to say? I'm a good person. I lived a good life. I think I'm going to, get to heaven. And unfortunately, I think they're missing it.
Would you say that it's not so much that you can't judge someone else for their decisions, but rather you can judge yourself by how you how you approach it.
Sure.
Because you can't control how they decide to live their lives, but you can't control how you decide to live.
100%. I think one of the scariest verses in the Bible that I read, and I'm like, whoo, kind of sends chills down my spine. And this is Christ's words. He says, "Judge not, or you too will be judged at the same level, the same manner in which you judge someone else." I'm like, bro, that's it. Because if you ask the person who's not a Christian, what's the biggest complaint against Christians? The biggest complaint, bar none, that's out there is they're judgy. You know, they look down their nose, they judge us. It's this high and mighty, this Pharisaical kind of attitude and persona. And it's really dangerous because a lot of people are walking around judging other people, and little do they realize, according to Christ, which is the truth, it's, well, they're going to be judged to that same level in which they judge other people. And so to your point, it's important not to judge that person, to judge ourselves first, make sure we're squared away, right? SEAL teams, we say that, man, make sure that you yourself are squared away before you help somebody else with their gear or anything else, right? So
what would you say the opposite of judgment is?
Being humble? Yeah.
Opposite of humility is pride, right? So it wouldn't be...
I think, well, the first word that popped into my mind was tolerance. And I might need to massage that a little bit, because I think there's a line that you can cross where you can become overly just tolerant and kind of letting everybody do whatever they want to do.
Understanding or empathetic.
Well, judging is more of your internals onto someone else, your internal mindset over a foreign mindset.
Okay.
So what would be your internal mindset onto yourself?
So I look at the core of the word judge, right? What does a judge do? A judge is right from wrong, right? Their job is to determine right from wrong, or you're following the law or not following the law. So when it comes down to being a Christian, really the only judge, well, at the end of the day, is going to be Jesus. Yep. So he tells us what's right from wrong. So none of us are at that level of a judge, which means, what is the opposite of saying right from, of having the ability to determine that something or someone is right or wrong? If you look at it as a title.
I'm still going to stick with my word tolerance.
Know what the Holy Spirit just gave me?
What's that?
Love.
And good, hang on to that, because that's where I was going, actually. So we can be tolerant of the person. That doesn't mean we accept their behavior or condone it. So we can tolerate the person, but our call as Christians is to love that person. So we can be tolerant in that we're not combative, we're not judging them, we're not in their face. And so many people are like, "Oh, I'm speaking the truth in love, brother." No, you're not, bro. You have a motive of contention and you being right, I'm wrong. So we tolerate them, but we love them through that tolerance in allowing them to make their decisions and not trying to control them, but still help lead them to the truth through our actions, because more is caught than taught. You believe behaviors before words. And so if our actions are loving, our words are loving, hopefully that will then impact that person to make a different decision.
It sounds as if you're describing a parent loving a child, or a relationship between parent and child. Is that similar?
I think once that child becomes a young adult, so I've got an 18-year-old son at home, I treat him differently as far as the tolerance goes, because he can make his own decisions now than I do my 13-year-old boys. My 13-year-old boys, I can be a little bit more of that authoritative, this is do what I say and do what I do, right? It's still important that our words match up with our actions. But with my son, let's just say hypothetically, he decides to, at his job, he's a bagger at King Soopers. Let's say he starts stealing some groceries. He starts stealing some things and he gets caught. Or, he decides to just go off the rails and start looking at porn all the time, and starts to make some pretty serious decisions that aren't good. I'm still going to love him and encourage him in the right way to not do that. But ultimately, that's up to him. So I think, yes, with our adult children, with our young adult children, that's absolutely a good model to operate by.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So let's say it's a man or woman that is same age as you. Do you apply the same methodology? Or can you apply the same methodology?
I can love I can love everyone, and whether I know them or not, I would say it depends on the authority that I have in their life. And I'm not saying authority as in I'm over them, but it depends on the amount of space that they've given me in their inner circle to really speak into their life. So with you and me, if I saw you kind of going off the rails, you know, I'd be like, dude, I love you, man. Like, what are you doing right now? But if it's someone that I don't know, then I'll pray for them. I'm still going to love them through my word and action, but I might not necessarily try to call them out if I don't have that mantle, if I don't have that relationship with them, if that makes sense. Unless the Holy Spirit convicts me or prompts me to say something to them, and I will. But that's a slippery slope, because that person could then think that I'm judging them, and then it just turns into a complete train wreck.
So would you say that love is what you do when someone is not worth helping, or when they don't seem like they're worth helping? Like they're going on another track and you know they've always been on this track, but they just seem to be slipping off. Most of the time, like when that happens, you usually don't really worry about that person. But would you say that love is just being there when the person is just doesn't seem like worth helping?
I'll give you an example. And I know what my answer would be, but I'm curious what you guys' answer would be. Could you love someone that says they're a Christian, but they abuse children? They're a serial
from a perspective of someone who's not part of any religion, I would say that based on my experience with Christians, that wouldn't be a Christian. That would be a self-fulfilling person.
Sure. Someone who calls himself a Christian but is obviously living in sin. A gross sin in your example.
Because at some point, that's too far that you can't. If someone's abusing other people, they're putting their own pains against other people. That is almost like the pure definition of someone who's evil. Yeah. A good person is someone who has bad things happen to them and doesn't put that on other people. Almost like protection. Like you have the capability of great violence as a Navy SEAL, but you choose not to put that on other people because you've seen things that no one else has ever seen before, and they will never know about it because that's something they don't need to see.
And at the same time, I mean, I got to look at Jesus. You know, in the Bible, his love knows no bounds. Does he love the prostitute? Absolutely. Does he love the tax collector, the sinner? Does he even love the Pharisees? That's the group of people he had the biggest beef with, were the Pharisees and the Sadducees, hypocrites. You whitewash tombs, you brood of vipers. He was very specific in what he thought of them. Did he love them less? Not at all. So are we still called to love the child molester? Even though that boils my blood, I think if we're to follow Christ's example, we are to love that person. How do we love them? For me, I would say, I'm going to call the police, right? I'm going to or take legal action, you know, against that person. At the very bare minimum, I'm going to pray for that person. I'm going to pray for their soul. I'm going to pray that they have an awakening, a Damascus Road experience where they realize, holy crap, what am I doing right now? And I need to change my life. I think that's a part of love. I think that's demonstrating love to that person.
For me, that is very difficult.
Oh yeah.
That's
Don't get me wrong, bro. I
probably would fail. And I hate to say it, but I probably would fail. And if anybody that knows me knows that if you were to violate one of his kids, I would have no issue whatsoever. I would have no issue putting myself on the line to end that threat. None. And I'd sleep well at night. I'd go sleep like a baby. But you know, is that Christ-like? No. I mean, because tax collectors were the worst sinners in the Bible, right? And Jesus was like, he had some of them. Well, who was the disciple that was attacked? Matthew.
As a disciple, yeah.
So I don't know. I would fail. I think I would fail, bro.
If you tell yourself that you're going to fail, then you're going to fail.
I'm telling you, I would fail.
But if you tell yourself that you would keep taking, because obviously, like when you're in the moment, you have to take that into consideration. Would you put your faith against your own point of view?
I think Christ's grace for us in those situations is sufficient in those moments. So I don't blame you whatsoever. And I agree with you that right now in this moment, as we're talking about it, that's our go-to. That's what we would say that we're going to do in that moment under the power of Christ and the influence of the Holy Spirit. It might be different.
Yeah. In my own flesh right now, So it would take, that's a tough one, man. That's a rough one. That's rough. I'm tearing up right now.
Well, it's one of those things that have to be experienced, because at some point hypotheticals just become hypothetical.
Yeah. One of the scripture verses that I went to really reconcile becoming a Navy SEAL, potentially taking the life of another person, which is extremely serious, was Romans chapter 13. And it talks about the authorities that are set in place that have a job to be able to make sure that we live in a peaceful place. And so one of those things is, as much as we would want to take the law into our own hands in that moment, we have a system set up, a legal system, a judicial system set up to be able to handle those people in a just way. Whether I pull the trigger right then, neutralizing the threat, it's only time, it's situationally dependent. Hopefully that we would do the right thing in that moment and maybe just put them in some flex cuffs, hog time, and then call 911, right? And then get the police there, and then they could deal with them accordingly. But, there are rules and laws of the land as well, too. If another example, you got somebody that's breaking into your house, right? And they're going for your kids and they're in the room. Legally, we are allowed to shoot that person, right? In Colorado, it's called the Make My Day law. It is. It's kind of
in trouble in Virginia.
It's kind of a cool law.
All right, we're already past the 30 mark.
Yeah.
I need more training, I guess.